In 1985, a deputy and the local sheriff headed out for their night patrol in a small Texas town, chasing down a simple tip. They never made it back to the station, kicking off one of the state's most enduring mysteries. Fast forward 16 years, and a couple of hikers in the mountains come across a derelict outhouse. They peek inside, and what's lying at the bottom of that grim pit turns everything the cops thought they knew upside down. The late afternoon sun stretched long shadows over the faded buildings of Presidio, Texas, a lonely outpost hugging the border where the sprawling Chihuahuan Desert rolled out toward Mexico. In 2001, this speck of a town barely scraped together 3,000 residents, a place so tight-knit that gossip was practically currency, and dark secrets simmered under the relentless heat. Detective Simon Reyes was hunched over his desk in the cramped police station, sifting through witness reports tied to a fresh missing person case. A 17-year-old girl had gone missing 3 days earlier, and the leads were already drying up. The buzz of fluorescent lights filled the room as he scribbled notes in the margins, so focused he didn't catch the sound of boots pounding down the hall until Officer Martinez burst in. Martinez was out of breath, his uniform clinging to him with sweat despite the station's air conditioning. "Just got a call from a ranger up in the Chinati Mountains," he gasped. "Hikers found a body." Simon's head snapped up. "Another missing girl?" "No, sir. It's a cop, in uniform. Ranger says it's been there a while but looks eerily preserved. Found in some old outhouse." Simon was on his feet in a flash, his chair screeching across the linoleum. His brain was already churning through possibilities. Grab the file on the 1985 disappearance of Sheriff Ray Holbrook and Deputy Leia Ortega. It's the only case we've got with missing officers. This might tie in. Martinez's eyes widened, he knew that case. Every cop in Presidio did. It was the town's most notorious unsolved mystery. On it, detective. As Martinez bolted out, Simon snatched his jacket and headed downstairs. The station was alive with movement, officers buzzing as the news spread like wildfire. He caught sight of Detective Cara DuPont by the coffee maker and called out, "Cara, we've got a body up in the mountains, maybe linked to the Holbrook-Ortega case. I need you with me." DuPont, a keen-eyed woman in her 40s, set her coffee down without hesitation. "Let me grab my stuff." Simon then turned to two deputies checking gear near the armory. "Deputy Carr, Deputy Maroro, you're coming too." Deputy Debbie Carr, a blonde in her mid-30s, looked startled. Deputy Trish Maroro, a bit younger with auburn hair tied back in a neat bun, shared a quick glance with her. Simon caught a subtle shift between them, unease, maybe even dread. Then it clicked. Back in '85, when Sheriff Holbrook and Deputy Ortega vanished, Debbie and Trish were rookie cops who'd come forward with disturbing claims. They said Holbrook had crossed lines, making unwanted advances and fostering a toxic workplace. They'd kept quiet at first, too scared of pushback. But after the sheriff and deputy disappeared, they'd shared their accounts. The leading theory was that Holbrook had abducted Ortega, maybe harmed or killed her, then skipped town. Neither was ever found. The team hustled to their vehicles. Martinez reappeared, clutching a hefty manila folder, the cold case file. "Here's everything on the '85 disappearance, detective." "Hop in," Simon said. "Fill me in on the way." They piled into two patrol cars, Simon and Martinez in the lead with the file open across Martinez's lap. As they peeled out of the station lot and headed for the mountains, Martinez started reading. Sheriff Ray Holbrook, 42 at the time. Deputy Leia Ortega, 25. They were on night shift, October 15, 1985. Last seen leaving the station at 8:47 p.m. for a standard patrol. When they didn't check in by morning, search teams went out. Their cruiser was found ditched on Highway 67, keys still in it. No signs of a fight. Simon wove through the thin traffic, his mind already piecing together scenarios. What about the follow-up? Massive searches across the desert came up empty. The FBI got involved briefly, thinking it might link to drug cartels in the area. Locals said Holbrook and Ortega were digging into rumors of missing girls, possibly tied to human trafficking across the border. That night, they were supposedly headed to the Dusty Spur Saloon, a rough spot known for truckers and shady types. The scenery shifted as they ascended into the Chinati Mountains, the desert scrub giving way to rocky ground sprinkled with juniper and pinyon pines. Simon pulled out his phone and dialed a number he'd kept for 16 years. Mrs. Ortega, it's Detective Simon Reyes, Presidio PD. The voice on the other end was fragile, worn by years of waiting. I'm calling about your daughter's case. We've got new evidence that might connect. Can you head to the Chinati Mountains? I'll send officers to bring you. Marisol Ortega's voice trembled. Evidence, after all this time. Is it? Leia? We're not sure yet, ma'am, but I wanted you to know right away. The officers will fill you in. After hanging up, they followed the ranger's coordinates, turning onto a rough dirt track that snaked higher into the mountains. The ground grew jagged, their cars jolting over rocks and ruts. Soon, they spotted a Park Service truck and two figures at a trailhead. The ranger, a grizzled man in his 50s, greeted them. Detective Reyes, I'm Bill Hutchins. The hikers are up the trail with my partner. It's about a quarter-mile trek to the outhouse. They grabbed their gear and followed Hutchins along a narrow, barely their path, overgrown and strewn with loose stones that made every step tricky. After 10 minutes of climbing, they reached a small clearing. Another ranger stood with an older couple near a weathered outhouse, its grade boards sagging with age. The door hung ajar, exposing a dark interior. The woman, decked out in high-end hiking gear, looked pale but steady. Her husband, a spry man in his 70s, kept an arm around her. I'm Detective Reyes, Simon said. You found the body? The woman nodded. I'm Ruth Donnelly, and this is my husband, Carl. We were hiking, trying a tougher route. You know, at our age, you want to prove you've still got some spark. She forced a faint smile. I needed a break after the climb and thought to use the outhouse. That's when I dropped my glasses. Fancy bifocals, Carl chimed in. $600. Ruth called me over to help fish them out. Ruth picked up the story. Carl tried using a stick to snag them. The pit was pitch black, deep. Then he spotted something that looked like leather. Carl fished out his keyring, showing off a tiny LED flashlight. Always carry this, habit from my engineering days. When I aimed it down, I saw a boot, with a foot still in it. We hightailed it to find the rangers, Ruth said. Didn't touch a thing after that. Hutchins stepped up. When I got here, we carefully lifted the toilet seat for a better look. That's when we saw the uniform, a badge, and what looks like a service pistol. We left everything as is after that quick check. Simon and DuPont approached the outhouse, snapping on latex gloves. It was a standard backcountry setup, a basic wooden box with a bench over a deep pit. But when Simon shone his flashlight into the gloom below, his breath caught. Amid layers of dried waste, a body was partly visible. The dry mountain air had mummified parts of it, preserving details that time should have erased. A sheriff's uniform stood out, along with a dulled badge and the grip of a revolver poking from a holster. "We need that body out," Simon said. "Call in a forensics team and workers with the right tools. We'll have to take part of this structure apart." While they waited for backup, Simon grilled the rangers about the outhouse's history. "This trail was shut down in '92, Hutchins said. "Too many unstable rocks, landslide risks. We stopped keeping up the trail and this facility. Honestly, I'm shocked these folks found it. The markers were pulled years ago. We spotted it on an old topo map," Carl admitted. "Figured it'd be a fun challenge." The forensics crew rolled in within the hour, joined by workers toting tools and protective gear. They meticulously dismantled the wooden floor around the toilet seat, widening the opening. Every board was lifted with care to avoid ruining evidence. When they finally pulled the body out, the forensics team was stunned by its condition. Dr. Patricia Chen, the medical examiner, knelt by the remains. "The dry air up here, plus the sealed, oxygen-poor pit, worked like a time capsule. The waste layers compacted over time, actually helping preserve some tissues." She gently brushed debris from the badge. "The numbers still readable." She called it out, and Simon's got twisted as Martinez cross-checked it with the file. "That's Sheriff Holbrook's badge number," Martinez whispered. The realization hit them all at once. If this was Holbrook, the whole case they'd built was wrong. Simon glanced at deputies Carr and Maroro, standing off to the side, visibly rattled. Tears streaked Debbie's face, and Trish hugged herself, shivering despite the warm afternoon. Another vehicle's arrival pulled Simon's focus. Marisol Ortega stepped out of a patrol car, steadied by a young officer. 16 years of hope and dread had worn her down, but her eyes still burned with determination. Simon met her before she could get closer. "Mrs. Ortega, I need to warn you. We found a body, but it's not Leia." Her face flickered with hope and anguish. "Not Leia? Then who?" "It looks like Sheriff Holbrook. He's likely been in that outhouse since the night they went missing." Marisol's knees buckled, and Simon guided her to a nearby boulder. "If this happened to Ray, what happened to my girl? Oh God, what could have happened to her?" "This flips the whole case on its head," Simon said softly, his voice steady but kind. "We don't know who's behind this. It could be an outsider, or," he trailed off, reluctant to suggest that Leia might have played a role. "No way," Marisol shot back, her tone fierce, cutting through his hesitation. "My Leia was a solid cop. She had a good soul, believed in doing right. If anything, she's a victim too. Someone took them both out." Simon turned to the rangers. "How many outhouses like this are scattered around these mountains?" Hutchins paused, thinking. "On old, forgotten trails, maybe a dozen or so within 5 miles. More if you include the ones still in use." "I want teams combing every single one," Simon directed. If someone hid a body here, they might have used other spots too. Whoever did this knew the terrain, knew this outhouse was off the radar. They were desperate enough to ditch a body in a pit instead of digging a grave. He scanned the scene again. Maybe they figured the pit would get cleaned out the next day, the body vanishing into the waste system. But the trail got abandoned, so it just sat there. The forensics crew worked carefully, collecting evidence despite the mess. Simon caught sight of Deputy's car and Maroro off to the side, clinging to each other, tears streaming. "Hold on a sec," he said to Marisol, then approached the two. "You two okay?" Debbie swiped at her eyes. "It's just, seeing him like this. Even after how he crossed lines with us, how wrong he was. No one should end up like that." "It's a gut punch," Trish added, her voice trembling. "Dredges up all those old wounds." Simon watched them closely. Something about their reaction felt off, but he couldn't put his finger on it. "Why don't you both head home? Take a couple days to sort through this. I'll reach out if we need you." They nodded, relieved, and started down the trail with another officer. Simon returned to Marisol. "We're turning this place upside down," he promised. "We won't quit until we find Leia." Marisol rose slowly, her body heavy with years of grief. "After today, I'm starting to brace myself. 16 years of wondering. Maybe it's time to let go. If Leia went through something like this, I don't know if I can bear to see her that way. I want to hold on to the memory of who she was." "I get it," Simon said gently. "Let me drive you home myself. DuPont can handle things here." DuPont gave a quick nod. "I've got it covered, Simon. No rush." Simon gathered the case file and evidence bags, gave final orders to the search teams, and guided Marisol down the rocky path. Behind them, the crumbling outhouse loomed like a silent tomb for long-buried truths, while the mountains held tight to whatever other secrets they hid. After dropping Marisol at her modest home on Presidio's south side, Simon cruised back to the station through deserted streets. The town felt quieter than ever, as if the mountain discovery had draped a heavy shadow over everything. His dashboard clock glowed 7:23 p.m. as he pulled into the lot. Inside, the night shift had taken over, but the day's chaos lingered in coffee-stained reports and papers strewn across desks. Simon sank into his chair, spreading the Holbrook-Ortega file across his desk. Under the stark fluorescent lights, he dove back into the case with a new perspective. Finding Holbrook's body turned the old story inside out. What if Leia wasn't a victim? What if she had a hand in the sheriff's death? But she'd have needed help. A young deputy couldn't take down someone like Holbrook, big and seasoned, on her own. He ran his finger along the timeline they'd pieced together. In '85, Holbrook and Ortega had been chasing whispers of missing girls for weeks before they vanished. 3 young women from Presidio County had disappeared that summer, all tied to suspected cartel activity along the border. The case notes showed growing urgency in the weeks leading up to their disappearance. He flipped to the witness statements from the Dusty Spur Saloon. On October 15, 1985, Holbrook and Ortega rolled in around 9:30 p.m. The bartender back then, Miguel Vasquez, had poured their drinks and recalled them asking about the truckers who hung out there. No one mentioned any trouble or odd behavior. The last confirmed sighting was at 11:15 p.m. when they settled their tab and left. Simon rubbed his weary eyes. Back in '85, there were no cameras to track their moves, no cell phones to trace. The investigation leaned entirely on what people said, and now he questioned how much of that held water. They'd checked nearby motels, but no one saw the sheriff or deputy. No signs of a struggle where their cruiser was found. It was like they'd melted into the desert night. Footsteps snapped him out of it. Cara DuPont stood in his doorway, exhaustion etched into her stance. Rangers checked the other outhouses, she said, slumping into a chair. Nothing. If there are more bodies out there, they're not in the abandoned ones. Simon leaned back, his chair groaning. 16 years. Holbrook's been rotting in that pit while we've been chasing shadows. Forensics is still at it, DuPont said, glancing at her watch. They'll be there past midnight. It's after 8 now. Go home, get some sleep. We'll hit this again tomorrow. I'm gonna stick around a bit, Simon said, nodding at the files. Something's nagging at me. DuPont stretched as she stood. Don't burn out. This case has sat for 16 years. It can handle one more night. After she left, Simon kept reading, but the words started to blur. His stomach growled, reminding him he'd missed lunch in the rush. The station was nearly empty now, just the night dispatcher and a couple of patrol officers. He finally gave in, locking the files in his drawer. He swung by the forensics lab, where techs were still sorting evidence. I'm grabbing some food, he told them. Call if anything big comes up. Outside, the October night had turned chilly. Simon sat in his car, weighing his options. He could hit Murphy's Diner, his usual spot, but his eyes drifted toward the east side, where the dusty Spur Saloon still stood after all these years. Curiosity got the better of him. He fired up the engine and drove through the silent streets, past shuttered shops and dimly lit homes, until he reached the bar. The lot was dotted with semi-trucks and pickups, lively but not crowded. The neon sign flickered, splashing red and blue across the gravel. Inside, the vibe was much like he remembered from years ago, country tunes from an old jukebox, the air thick with beer and fried food. Truckers filled most tables, maps and papers scattered among their drinks. Simon slid onto a bar stool, noticing how chatter dipped when he walked in. His detective's uniform made him stand out. But he brushed it off. The bartender, a young guy in his mid-20s with slick back hair and jittery eyes, wasn't the Miguel Vasquez from the files. What can I get you, officer? Detective, Simon corrected. Bourbon, neat, and a burger if the kitchen's still open. You got it. As the bartender poured, Simon kept it light. How long you been working here? 3 years or so. Why? Just wondering. The files mention a guy named Miguel Vasquez tending bar here in the 80s. The bartender's hand froze for a split second. Miguel? He bailed about 10 years back. Just up and gone one day. Any idea where he went? Nope. Cleared out his place on Elm Street, didn't leave a trace. Owner tried tracking him down for his last check, but it was like he vanished. He slid the bourbon over. I'll get that burger started. Simon nursed his bourbon, scanning the barroom. The truckers scattered around looked like the usual long-haul crowd, the type who regularly crossed the border. When the bartender came back, Simon leaned in casually. These guys mostly hauling in from Mexico? The bartender's reply was cagey. Some from south of the border, some local. You know, produce rigs, factory shipments, that kind of thing. But Simon caught the quick flick of the guy's eyes toward a corner table where four men hunched over their beers, heads close together. He also noticed other patrons stealing glances his way, especially the latecomers. Their stares sent a shiver down his spine. Simon polished off his burger, tossed some cash on the counter, and made for the exit. As he pushed through the door, he shot a look back and saw the bartender deep in a whispered huddle with the corner table crew, all of them tracking his departure. In his car, Simon sat for a beat, mulling over what he'd just seen. The dusty spur wasn't just a watering hole for truckers, it was a hub for something shadier, and his showing up had clearly rattled the place's underbelly. He turned the key, the engine rumbling to life, feeling uneasy as he pulled out of the lot, already planning to come back with backup and sharper questions. Inside the car, Simon flicked on the overhead light and grabbed the case file he'd brought along. He flipped through the witness statements until he hit Patered, Miguel Vasquez's old address from 1985, 59, Cedar Avenue, just a stone's throw from the bar. Tomorrow, he'd swing by with DuPont, see if any neighbors could shed light on where Vasquez had disappeared to. For now, though, fatigue was creeping in. The rush from the mountain discovery had faded, leaving him bone-tired. Simon eased out of the dusty Spurs lot and headed west toward home. The streets were nearly deserted, with only the occasional pickup or late-night delivery van breaking the quiet. About 2 miles in, he clocked headlights in his rearview, a dark sedan, maybe a Ford or a Chevy, trailing him at a steady 3-car lengths. No big deal, it was a main road. But when he hung a left onto Mesquite Street, the sedan followed. Another left onto 3rd Avenue, same deal. His grip tightened on the wheel. 3 turns might be a fluke. He jerked right onto Desert View Road, no signal. The sedan's blinker flashed, and it stayed on him. Simon's pulse kicked up. 20 years on the force had honed his gut, and right now it was screaming he was being followed. He could radio for backup, but what would he say? Some car taking the same route? He needed something solid. The Chevron on Palm Street was still open, its stark lights cutting through the night. Simon swerved into the lot without signaling, pulling up to a pump like he needed fuel. He kept an eye on his mirrors. The sedan slowed as it neared the station, then cruised past without turning in. Simon glimpsed the driver, a Hispanic man, cap pulled low, face shadowed. The car was a dark blue Chevy Malibu, late 90s model. The plate was too dark to read. He lingered at the pump for 5 minutes, pretending to scroll his phone while watching the road. When the Malibu didn't loop back, he eased up a bit. Probably just on edge from the bar, those truckers' stares had gotten under his skin. He pulled back onto Palm Street, sticking to his usual route home. But 10 minutes later, as he turned onto his street, his breath hitched. There it was, the same blue Malibu, parked 3 houses down from his place, lights off, engine quiet. Simon slowed his patrol car, eyeing the house where the sedan sat, 47, Cedar Avenue. No lights, no porch glow, no signs of life. He cracked his window, letting in the night sounds, crickets chirping, a far-off dog barking, the hum of AC units. Then a sharp crash of glass cut through, followed by a muffled yell, coming from inside the dark house. He grabbed his radio. Unit 23 to dispatch. I'm at 47, Cedar Avenue. Heard glass shatter and shouting from inside. Doing a wellness check. Copy, Unit 23. Backups available if you need it. Standing by, came the reply, though Simon knew the closest unit was likely 15 minutes out. He approached the front door, hand resting on his holstered gun but not drawing it. The doorbell got no answer, so he knocked hard. Police. Everything all right in there? Footsteps shuffled inside, and the door swung open to reveal a man in his 40s, Hispanic, in jeans and a white tank top. Simon didn't know him, but that wasn't odd. Presidio had grown a bit lately. Evening, officer, the man said, voice steady but eyes guarded. All good here. I heard glass break and someone yell, Simon pressed. Mind telling me what's up? The man's shoulders loosened slightly. Oh, that? Knocked over my wife's favorite vase, her mom's old keepsake. She's pretty torn up about it. You know how it is with sentimental stuff. Your wife home? I'd like to check in with her, make sure everything's okay. She's in the bathroom, cleaning up the mess. She got pretty emotional, meant a lot to her. The guy stayed planted in the doorway, blocking Simon's view inside. Simon tried to peek past him. The house was dark, but he could make out shapes in what seemed to be the living room. There, on the couch, was that a person? The figure didn't budge, but it looked human. Who else is in there with you? Simon asked. Just me and my wife. Like I said, she's in the bathroom. But the silhouette on the couch hadn't moved. Simon's instincts were screaming again, but he was solo, no backup, and a broken vase wasn't exactly probable cause. He keyed his radio, eyes locked on the man. Dispatch, Unit 23. Resident says it was an accidental vase breaking. Situation seems under control. I'm clearing. Copy, Unit 23. Simon stepped back. All right, sir. Sorry to bother you. Have a good night. You too, officer, the man said, already shutting the door. Simon walked back to his car, nerves on high alert. He slid behind the wheel, paused, then dialed DuPont's personal number. Simon, her voice came through, thick with sleep. What's going on? Sorry to wake you, Kara. Something's up. He ran through his night, the bar, the tale, the weird encounter at the house. Something's off. That figure on the couch, if his wife was in the bathroom, who was sitting there? DuPont was wide awake now. You're thinking it's tied to the Holbrook case. The timing's too convenient. You hit the bar where Holbrook was last seen, and now you're being followed, and this house, Simon cut in, a memory clicking. Hold up, the address is 47, Cedar Avenue. The old bartender, Vasquez, lived at 59 Cedar, same street. Could be nothing in a town this size. We both know that's no coincidence, DuPont said. Simon started the engine. Can you meet me? I want to keep eyes on this area tonight. Give me 15. Where? Chevron on Palm Street. I'll be there. I'm coming. Simon drove the short distance to the gas station, parking where he could watch the road. The Malibu was gone from Cedar Avenue when he'd left, but he had a hunch it'd show up again. Whatever he'd stirred up at the dusty spur, someone didn't want him poking further. 12 minutes later, DuPont's car rolled in. She was in jeans and a jacket, her service weapon tucked in a shoulder holster. She climbed into his patrol car, the smell of coffee trailing her. "Brought you some," she said, handing over a travel mug. "Figured we'd need a boost for this late-night stakeout." Simon took it, grateful. "Thanks. Something's brewing." "Kara. I can feel it." "Then let's figure out what," she said, checking her gun. "Where do we start?" "Cedar Avenue," Simon said, shifting into gear. "I need another look at that house." From the Chevron, they cruised back through Presidio's quiet streets toward Cedar Avenue. The dashboard clock read 10:47 p.m., the town mostly asleep. As they neared the house from the wellness check, Simon eased off the gas. "That's weird," he muttered. The blue Malibu was gone. The house at 47 Cedar stood dark and silent, like it was deserted. Simon parked across the street, eyeing the row of houses. Something bugged him about the address numbers. Kara Vasquez's old place was 59 Cedar Avenue. "Check out the houses." They scanned the street, 45, 47, 49, 51, then a gap where 53 through 57 should have been, jumping straight to 61. "Number 59, DuPont noted. "That's not right. Let's take a closer look." They stepped out, flashlights in hand, the cool night air carrying a faint whiff of desert creosote. Simon approached the house that should have been 59 based on its spot. It was the same dark house from earlier. "Check this out," he said, aiming his light at the house number. The 47 looked fresh, paint newer than the faded siding, and up close, he could make out faint traces of older numbers. "Someone changed this number recently." DuPont hit the radio. "Dispatch, we need a property records check on Cedar Avenue, specifically what should be 59 Cedar. It's showing as 47 now, but it looks tampered with." While they waited for a response, they circled the house. No lights, no sounds. The Malibu's absence screamed that someone had bolted fast. "Simon," DuPont called from the side yard, crouching near a patio by an empty clay pot. She pointed her flashlight at a small silver butterfly pin studded with rhinestones. They both gloved up. DuPont lifted the pin, examining it in the light. "I've seen Debbie wear this. She's got a whole set of these butterfly pins, swaps them out daily." "You sure about that?" Simon asked, though a cold knot of certainty was already tightening in his gut. "Dead certain," DuPont replied, her face grim. "Debbie showed me her collection once, said her grandma got her started on these butterfly pins." She paused, her voice dropping. "What was she doing here?" Simon slipped the pin into an evidence bag, sealing it carefully. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Try calling her." DuPont pulled out her phone and dialed. After a beat, she shook her head. "Voicemail, straight away. Try Trish." "Same deal." Voicemail. The radio crackled to life. "Unit 23, property records show 59, Cedar Avenue was last registered to Miguel Vasquez in 85. Things get murky after 91, maybe a clerical screw-up. The current resident, now listed at 47 Cedar, is Juan Delgado. Moved in 3 months back." 3 months. That's fresh enough to raise red flags, especially with that switched-up house number, Simon said, his mind racing. Kara, we need to check on Trish and Debbie. Trisha's place is closer, 6 blocks over on Sage Street. They hustled back to the patrol car. The short drive felt endless, Simon's unease growing with every block. As they turned onto Sage Street, Trish Maroro's small adobe house came into view, its porch light glowing. But something was wrong. Front doors open, DuPont pointed out, her voice tight. They parked and approached cautiously, hands resting on their holsters. The door hung ajar, swaying slightly in the night breeze, revealing nothing but darkness inside. Deputy Maroro, Simon called. Trish, it's Detective Reyes. You okay? Silence. They exchanged a look. Simon nudged the door wider with his flashlight, its beam catching dark stains on the entryway's tile floor. Blood. Dispatch, this is Unit 23. We've got a possible crime scene at 312, Sage Street, Simon radioed. Blood evidence visible. Send backup and forensics, now. Copy. Units on the way. They stepped inside, weapons drawn, moving carefully. The blood trail stretched from the entry down the hall, smears and droplets hinting at a struggle, someone dragged. The house was quiet except for a faint clock ticking in the dark. They cleared each room methodically. Living room empty, but a lamp lay toppled, kitchen with dishes piled in the sink, no signs of a fight. The trail led to the master bedroom. The bedroom screamed violence, bed sheets twisted, half pulled off the mattress, more blood on the carpet. The sliding glass door to the tiny backyard stood wide open. No body. No Trish. She put up a fight, DuPont said, eyeing the disheveled room. Didn't go easy. Simon holstered his gun and tried calling both deputies again. Nothing but voicemail. Backup units arrived, securing the scene as forensics began processing the blood. This ties to this morning, Simon said, pacing the living room while Tex worked. We find Holbrook's body, and that same night, the 2 deputies who pointed fingers at him 16 years ago vanish. The bartender, DuPont cut in, her voice sharp. You said he was whispering with those truckers when you left. Simon's mind kicked into overdrive. Yeah, huddled up at that corner table, gesturing my way, and those truckers, he grabbed his radio. Dispatch, Detective Reyes. I need an immediate bolo and roadblocks on every way out of town. No trucks, commercial or otherwise, leave Presidio until we say so. That's a tall order, Detective, Dispatch crackled back. We'll need. We've got 2 missing officers and a possible link to organized trafficking, Simon snapped. Make it happen. Set up checkpoints on 67 and every back road. Nothing moves without a search. Copy, Detective. Setting it up. Simon turned to DuPont. Those truckers at the bar know something. If they're trying to slip out of town with Debbie and Trish, we're on borrowed time. Back to the Dusty Spur, DuPont said, finishing his thought. Dusty Spur it is, Simon agreed. They left the crime scene to the other officers and raced to their patrol car. Time was slipping away, and somewhere out there, 2 of their own were in trouble. The link between the morning's discovery and tonight's chaos was sharpening, but Simon had a sinking feeling they were already behind. The Dusty Spur's parking lot was still half-packed when Simon and DuPont pulled up, their patrol car's light slicing through the dark. Through the bar's grimy windows, they saw heads turn, conversations dying as patrons clocked their arrival. Cops showing up this late spelled trouble. Simon led the way inside, DuPont close behind. The jukebox crooned an old Willie Nelson song, but the vibe had shifted hard from his earlier visit. Truckers kept their eyes on their beers, avoiding contact. A few guys near the back exit fidgeted, uneasy. The young bartender was polishing glasses, trying to look busy, but his hands shook when he spotted Simon heading his way. "We need a word," Simon said, his voice cutting through the bar's hum. "Right now." "I don't know nothing," the bartender blurted, too fast. "You can't just waltz in here accusing." "No one's accusing you yet," DuPont cut him off. "But 2 officers are missing, and you were the last one seen chatting with truckers who bolted after Detective Reyes left. So, we can do this out here in front of everybody, or we can talk somewhere quiet." The bartender's eyes darted around, maybe hunting for backup or an exit. Finding neither, he deflated. "There's an office out back." They followed him down a narrow hall past the bathrooms to a dingy office reeking of old cigarettes and stale beer. Metal filing cabinets lined one wall, and a desk buried under receipts and invoices took up most of the space. Simon shut the door while DuPont positioned herself to keep an eye on both the bartender and the entrance. "Name?" Simon started. "Carlos. Carlos Mendoza." "All right, Carlos, here's the deal," Simon said, leaning against the desk, his tone easy but firm. "We're looking into missing women in Presidio County, cases that smell like trafficking, maybe tied to drugs. In a town this small, if truckers are moving dirty goods across the border, someone at their go-to bar would know something." Carlos shook his head. "I just pour drinks, man. I don't get nosy." "That's where you're wrong," DuPont said. "Keeping quiet when you know crimes are going down makes you part of it. But help us now. And you're just a witness. Big difference when the DA starts sniffing around." Simon watched Carlos wrestle with his choices, sweat beading on his forehead despite the chilly night. "You can play this smart," Simon pressed, "or when we tie you to these trafficking rings, and we will, you'll crash with the rest of them. Up to you." Carlos's defenses finally cracked. All right. I don't know the whole deal. They pay me extra to keep an eye out for cops, DEA, anybody official. When someone like you shows up, I tip off certain people." "Who?" Simon asked. "A crew of truckers, not your average haulers. They roll in from Ojinaga." Carlos wiped his face with a bar rag. "I give them a heads up if there's trouble. They spread the word." "Ojinaga, Chihuahua," DuPont clarified. "Right across the border." "What do they call themselves?" "I've heard them say Los Transportistas sometimes." "The transporters. Not exactly creative, huh?" Carlos tried a weak grin that faded fast. "They swing through a couple times a week, different trucks but the same core group." "What are they moving?" Simon asked, though he had a bad feeling he already knew. Carlos stared at the floor. "I never asked flat out." "You don't ask questions like that if you want to stay alive." "But you hear things." "What things?" DuPont pressed. "Drugs, obviously. That's a given. But sometimes," he hesitated, mustering courage. "Sometimes I'd see them with young women, not working girls, but Americans, from across the border. They looked scared, sometimes out of it, like they'd been drugged. I tried not to see it. Simon's jaw tightened. And you never thought to report it? To who? Carlos fired back, his voice suddenly sharp. You think you're the first cops to roll through? Others knew, probably got paid to look away. How was I supposed to know who's clean? That hit Simon hard. Debbie and Tricia's involvement was starting to come into focus. You keep drugs here? DuPont asked. No way, I swear on my mom's grave. No drugs in the bar. That's not my deal. I just watch and pass word along. That's it. Simon glanced at DuPont. Carlos was a small fry in a big operation, but he might be their shot at finding the missing deputies. You're coming with us to the station, Simon decided. We need a full statement, and you're helping us ID those truckers from photos. Carlos nodded, looking defeated. Am I under arrest? Depends on how much you help, DuPont said. Right now, you're a witness. Keep cooperating, and you'll stay that way. They escorted him out through the bar. Several patrons had already cleared out, and the ones left kept their eyes glued to the tables. Two uniformed officers met them at the door to take Carlos to the station. Outside, Simon hit his radio, coordinating with other agencies. Border Patrol needed to check their cameras for trucks crossing in the last few hours. Checkpoint officers needed descriptions of rigs from Ojinaga. Most critically, they needed Mexican authorities on board. Get me a line to Ojinaga police, Simon told dispatch, and connect me to DEA and FBI field offices. We've got possible international trafficking with American citizens in immediate danger. As they raced back to their car, DuPont was already on her phone with border crossing supervisors. Every second counted, each minute pulled Debbie and Trish deeper into a nightmare that had been hiding in plain sight for years. If they crossed before the bolo, DuPont said as they sped along, they could already be in Ojinaga. Then we go after them, Simon said, his voice grim. The 15-minute drive to the border pushed the patrol car to its limits, Simon flooring it while DuPont worked the radio and phone, syncing with multiple agencies. The Presidio Ojinaga International Bridge loomed ahead, its lights a stark glow against the desert night. Border security had beefed up screening at Simon's request. An agent met them at the checkpoint, his expression dour. Detective Reyes, we checked the footage. A Freightliner semi crossed at 11:02 p.m., just 8 minutes before your bolo hit. Mexican plates, registered to an Ojinaga shipping outfit. That's our truck, Simon confirmed. What's the plan for pursuit? The agent handed him a tablet with the crossing footage. FBI and DEA are already working with their Mexican counterparts. With possible kidnapping of American cops, you'll be under bilateral case protocols. Mexican feds have jurisdiction, but you can observe and assist. Within minutes, a convoy formed, FBI agents in black SUVs, DEA vehicles, and Mexican federal police units that had crossed to escort them. In 2001, post-NAFTA cooperation was still shaky, but the abduction of U.S. officers triggered fast-tracked protocols. Crossing the bridge, the Rio Grande a dark streak below, Simon felt the weight of leaving U.S. soil. In Mexico, they'd be at the mercy of their hosts' cooperation. On the Ojinaga side, Captain Roberto Hernandez, a seasoned Mexican federal police commander with silver at his temples, greeted them in crisp English. Detective Reyes, we've tracked the vehicle. Our surveillance followed it to Calle Revolution in the Zona Rosa district. Red light district, DuPont noted, though it wasn't needed. The trucks parked outside La Rosa de Fuego, Rose of Fire, Hernandez continued. It's a known spot with cartel ties. We've been building a case but weren't ready to move yet. Your missing officers just sped up our clock. The convoy rolled through Ojinaga's streets, a mix of pavement and dirt tracks. Smaller than Presidio but denser, the city had buildings crammed tight, with narrow alleys snaking between. The Zona Rosa brought a shift, neon signs touting bars and brothels, music spilling out, women in skimpy outfits calling to passers-by. Calle Revolution was a short strip lined with seedy spots. The Freightliner sat outside a gaudy pink two-story building, a flickering neon rose glowing above the door. Other vehicles nearby hinted the place was hopping despite the late hour. Hernandez orchestrated the raid with precision. We hit hard and fast. Lock down all exits. DEA takes any drugs. My team handles Mexican nationals. FBI covers Americans. Reyes, you and your partner focus on finding your officers. They stormed in through the front and back doors at once, shouts of Policia Federal echoing as they breached the building. The place was a labyrinth of tight corridors, cramped rooms, and a main bar area. Pandemonium broke loose, men bolted for exits, women shrieked, furniture crashed to the floor. Simon and DuPont moved deliberately, sweeping each room. They found young women, some dazed and clearly drugged, others numbly accepting their lot. DEA agents were already bagging what looked like heroin in a back office, while Mexican federal police had several men pinned face down, including a few Simon recognized from the dusty spur. Simon. DuPont's voice called from the second floor. I've got them. He raced up the narrow staircase to find DuPont in a small room where deputies Debbie Carr and Trish Maroro sat on a grimy mattress, still in their wrinkled, soiled uniforms. Both looked shell-shocked, tears streaming down their faces. Thank God, Trish whispered, her voice barely audible. We thought we were done for. Get them out now, Simon told DuPont. I'll keep looking for others. He pressed on down the hall, checking each room. Most were empty now, their occupants either fled or cuffed downstairs. In the last room at the corridor's end, he found her. She sat on the bed's edge, draped in a cheap silk robe, her face etched with the wear of years. Early 40s now, but even after 16 years, even in this grim place, Simon knew it was Deputy Leia Ortega. A man was scrambling out the window, ditching his client at the first sign of trouble. Leia sat frozen, staring at Simon with a mix of shock and something deeper, shame, maybe surrender. Ma'am, Simon started gently, then switched to Spanish. Señora, soy Detective Simon Reyes, del Departamento de Policía. I speak English, Leia said, her voice flat, hollow. What are American cops doing here? Simon stepped inside, keeping his movements calm, non-threatening. I'm Detective Reyes. I've been working your missing person case. You're Leia Ortega, right? A flicker crossed her eyes, surprised that her name still meant something. Maybe. You're way too late. 16 years too late. No such thing as too late, Simon said softly. He radioed DuPont to keep securing Debbie and Trish, then shut the door to give Leia some privacy. I know this isn't how you pictured being found, but you were a damn good officer. You still deserve respect, no matter what. Leia let out a bitter laugh, gesturing at the shabby room. Respect? Look at me. Look at this dump. I'm exactly the kind of person we used to lock up. You're a survivor, Simon said firmly. What happened wasn't your choice. We found Sheriff Holbrook this morning. We know you didn't walk away willingly. At the mention of Holbrook, Leia's mask cracked. Ray. You found Ray? In an outhouse up in the Chinati Mountains. He's been there the whole time. Simon watched her grapple with the news. Your mom never stopped searching for you. Never lost hope. That broke her. Leia buried her face in her hands, sobbed, shaking her. Mama. God, I thought of her every day. But how can I face her like this? After what I've been, what I've done. Simon pulled a wooden chair over, sitting carefully to keep a professional distance while showing he cared. You made it through. That's what counts. Your mom wants you back, no matter what. The door creaked open, and DuPont poked her head in. Debbie and Trish are safe. Medics are checking them. We're processing other American women too. Simon nodded, turning back to Leia. Let's get you out of here and checked by medics. Then we'll arrange for you to see your mom. Presidio's just 30 minutes away, she could be here soon. Leia wiped her eyes, looking adrift. She's probably asleep. It's so late. I doubt she's slept soundly in 16 years, Simon said gently. Want me to call her? Leia stared at him for a long moment, then gave a slow nod. Yes. I need her. They helped her gather her few belongings, mostly worn clothes. Downstairs was organized chaos, Mexican authorities processing workers and patrons, DEA cataloging drugs, FBI questioning potential trafficking victims. Simon stayed close to Leia, shielding her from prying eyes, preserving what dignity she had left. Outside, medics had set up a triage area. They checked Leia first, confirming she was stable despite years of trauma. Debbie and Trish were cleared for transport too, though all three would need thorough medical exams later. Simon stepped aside to call Marisol Ortega, knowing this call would change her world. Behind him, in the neon-drenched night of Ojinaga's roughest corner, 3 women lost to different shadows had finally been pulled into the light. The case was far from closed, but for now, they were safe. The Ojinaga Federal Police Station was a plain concrete building, smelling of strong coffee and antiseptic. With the operation crossing borders, Captain Hernandez had set up initial interviews here before the Americans were moved back to Presidio. Simon led Leia to a small interrogation room while DuPont took Debbie and Trish to another. The room was bare, just a metal table and 3 chairs. Leia sat across from Simon, clutching a coffee someone had handed her. She'd changed into clean clothes from the Mexican Red Cross, but she still looked fragile, like she might break apart. You're not under arrest, Simon started, placing a recorder on the table. You're a victim here. But I need to know what went down 16 years ago and everything since. Can you handle that? Leia nodded, her voice barely a whisper. Where should I start? October 15, 1985. Your work with Sheriff Holbrook. The case you were chasing. Leia took a shaky breath. Ray and I were digging into rumors about missing girls. 3 young women had vanished from Presidio County that summer, all linked to possible trafficking rings. We'd been chasing leads for weeks, closing in on something major. How was your relationship with Holbrook? Strictly professional. He was my mentor when I started on the force. Whatever Debbie and Trish claimed later, Ray was a good guy. Tough, a bit old school, but I never saw him step over the line with anyone. She sipped her coffee, steadying herself. That night, after our shift, we decided to hit the Dusty Spur Saloon. An informant tipped us off that the truckers there might know something about the missing girls. Simon leaned in. Tell me what happened at the bar. We got there around 9:30. Place was packed with truckers. Ray and I split up, asking questions, trying to keep it low-key. I was chatting with some drivers by the pool table when Ray waved me over to the bar. He'd gotten us beers, said we needed to blend in. Her face darkened. I didn't think twice. We'd barely taken a sip when I started feeling woozy. Ray too, he was clutching the bar, trying to stay upright. Drugged, Simon said. Probably Rohypnol or something like it. By the time we realized, it was too late. We stumbled outside, aiming for our cruiser, but they were waiting. Who? 4 guys. I recognized one, Raul Espinoza, called El Lobo. He ran the trafficking network between Presidio and Ojinaga. The others were his enforcers. Leia's hands shook around her cup. Ray fought back, even drugged. He pulled his gun, but he was outnumbered, clumsy from the drugs. They beat him with tire irons. When he kept fighting, El Lobo shot him twice in the chest. Simon jotted notes, keeping his face steady despite the grim story. Then what? They were freaking out. Someone in the bar heard the shots and called it in. I was barely conscious, but I heard them arguing about what to do. They threw me in a van and loaded Ray's body into a truck. That's when another patrol car showed up, Debbie and Trish. Leia nodded. They were responding to the shots fired call, but instead of cuffing anyone, I saw El Lobo talking to them. Even half out, I caught bits of it: cash, protection, pin it on the sheriff. They were cutting a deal. Simon felt the puzzle pieces snapping together. So Debbie and Trish were already in with the cartel. Not before that night, I don't think. But El Lobo was sharp. He knew they were desperate. Everyone at the station knew Debbie's gambling debts were out of control and Trish was drowning in medical bills for her son's leukemia. He offered them a way out they couldn't turn down. They helped cover up the murder, gave El Lobo's crew time to clean the scene and slip away. Later, they probably dumped Ray's body in that outhouse, thinking it'd get cleared out and vanish. Then they spun the story about Ray harassing them, painting him as the villain who likely ran off with me. Simon took it in, realizing it likely matched what DuPont was hearing from Debbie and Trish. What happened to you after that? Leia's composure shattered. They took me to Ojinaga, burned my ID, kept me doped up for weeks. What they did, she faltered, voice breaking. They broke me, detective, body, mind, everything. By the time the drugs cleared, I was too shattered to fight back. They called me Lucia, stuck me in their brothel. In 16 years, you never tried to get out. How? Her voice was raw with bitterness. No ID, no money, no way to prove who I was. The place was always guarded. Girls who tried running got beaten or worse, made examples. After years of that life, you start believing it's all you're worth, that this is you now. Your picture never got much attention, Simon noted. The scandal about Holbrook's alleged harassment drowned out everything else. El Lobo bragged about that once, how it all fell into place. Everyone was so fixated on Ray being a creep that no one looked too hard for either of us. A knock on the door broke the moment. DuPont stepped in, holding a folder, her face tight. She handed it to Simon, who scanned it quickly. Debbie Carr had spilled everything, her spiraling gambling debts, the deal with El Lobo, helping dispose of Holbrook's body. Trish Maroro's account was similar, driven by desperation to cover her son's leukemia treatments. They told themselves Holbrook had it coming, Simon read from Trish's statement. "Help us, or you disappear like the others," El Lobo said. "When you found Ray's body this morning, they knew the jig was up. They probably tried to back out of their deal with the cartel," Leia said. "And got snatched for it." Simon nodded. The cartel couldn't risk them talking. Another knock. A Mexican officer reported in Spanish that Leia's mother had arrived. Leia's face paled. "She's here. How'd she get across so fast?" "Border agents fast-tracked her," Simon said. "She's been waiting 16 years for this." He stood. "Let's get you properly checked by medics first. Then we'll set up protective custody for you and your mom, a safe house while we build the case against El Lobo and his network." They stepped out into the station's main area. Across the room, Simon saw Debbie and Trish being processed by Mexican authorities for transport back to Presidio for booking. Both kept their eyes down, avoiding all gazes. Then he saw Marisol Ortega by the entrance, gripping a small purse. 16 years of hope and pain had aged her, but her eyes still burned with a fierce search for answers. When she spotted Leia, her hand flew to her mouth. "Mija, Erie's too. My girl, is it really you?" Leia took a shaky step forward. "Mama, I'm so sorry. I'm filthy, broken. I don't deserve to call myself a cop. I couldn't even save myself, how could I protect anyone? I've done awful things, turned into someone we'd have arrested." Marisol didn't hesitate, crossing the room in quick strides to wrap her daughter in a fierce embrace. "No, Mija, no. None of this was your fault. You're my daughter, and I love you, always. We'll start fresh. There are people who'll help us." They held each other, 16 years of pain melting into tears. Around them, seasoned officers turned away, giving them space, some brushing away their own tears. Simon approached gently. "Mrs. Ortega, we pulled dozens of women out of that brothel tonight. DEA and Mexican authorities are hitting cartel stash houses as we speak. Your daughter's survival is going to help us dismantle an entire trafficking ring." Marisol clutched Leia tighter. "She's alive. That's all I care about." "Leia needs a full medical workup at a hospital," Simon added. "You can ride with her, of course. We'll have security with you both, and then we'll move you to a safe house until the trials are done." They nodded, still locked in their embrace. As they headed for the waiting police vehicles, Leia turned back to Simon. "Detective, thank you for not giving up, for seeing me as a person, not just this." "You've always been Deputy Leia Ortega," Simon said firmly. A good officer betrayed by those who should have had your back. Nothing changes that. As they stepped into the pre-dawn darkness, Ojinaga slept on, unaware that a 16-year nightmare had finally broken. The police car pulled away, carrying a mother and daughter toward recovery, while behind them, the wheels of justice began to grind. Simon reflected as they drove away, the truth had been buried in the darkest corners, an abandoned outhouse, a border brothel, the corrupted hearts of those sworn to serve. But truth, like hope, had a stubborn way of enduring even the deepest shadows. And sometimes, against all odds, the lost could still be found.